The park was alive with the usual weekend energy. Children ran around chasing bubbles, couples strolled hand in hand, and street vendors shouted friendly greetings as they offered ice cream, coffee, and handmade trinkets. Amidst all this, one area had a small crowd gathered, and in the middle of that crowd stood a musician with a guitar that looked as if it had seen better days. Despite the worn strings and scuffed wood, he played with a passion that made people stop in their tracks. She walked by, drawn by the sound of music that seemed to touch something deep inside her. She had no particular plan to stop, but the melody pulled her closer, and soon she was standing among the people who had paused to listen. She didn't know much about music theory or famous musicians, but she knew talent when she saw it, and she could feel it vibrating through every note he played. There was something pure and honest about the way he strummed the strings, something that made the world around her fade for just a moment. As she watched, she noticed the concentration in his eyes, the way his fingers danced across the frets with ease, and the slight smile that appeared whenever a note resonated perfectly. The song was not one she recognized immediately, but it felt familiar in a way that made her heart beat a little faster. The air around them seemed different, charged with something she couldn't quite put into words. People whispered to each other, some tapping their feet or nodding their heads. Caught up in the rhythm and emotion, she hesitated for a moment, feeling a little nervous. She had never approached a street performer before, let alone asked them to play a specific song. What if he refused? What if she embarrassed herself? Her mind raced with possibilities, but the music had already reached a point where she couldn't just walk away. Taking a deep breath, she stepped a little closer and found herself smiling awkwardly. "Excuse me?" she said softly, trying not to interrupt the flow of his playing. He paused briefly, giving her a curious look, his fingers still resting on the strings. Could you play a song I like?" The musician tilted his head slightly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Sure," he replied. "Which one?" She hesitated again, feeling the weight of all eyes on them now, though most of the crowd was quietly listening. "It's called A Place for Dreams. It's special to me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. He nodded slowly, as if understanding more than just the title. "All right," he said, strumming a chord to set the tone. "I'll give it a try." What followed was nothing like she expected. The first notes were soft, tentative, and almost shy, but as he got into the rhythm, the song came alive. It wasn't a perfect replication of what she had imagined, but it was something better. It carried emotion, a story that didn't need words, and it spoke directly to her heart. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, and she had to swallow hard to keep them from falling. The music was alive, and so was she in that moment. People around them started to take notice. A small group of children stopped their game to listen, their eyes wide with curiosity. A couple holding hands leaned closer together, sharing the experience silently. Even the vendors paused their sales. For a moment, drawn in by the melody that seemed to touch everyone differently, the park, usually filled with chatter and laughter, had grown quiet as if respecting the moment. She couldn't help but watch him closely. There was a kind of magic in the way he moved with the guitar, how each strum seemed deliberate, yet effortless. He wasn't just playing a song, he was telling a story, one that had twists and turns, highs and lows, and moments of quiet reflection. She felt a strange connection to him, though they had never met before. It was as if he could sense the story she carried in her heart and was translating it through the strings. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours, and the song finally drew to a close. The last note lingered in the air, and for a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the crowd. It started with a few claps, then grew louder until everyone around was cheering, some whistling, some shouting words of praise. She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest, and for the first time in a long while, she felt truly seen. As if her request had unlocked something extraordinary, the musician gave a modest nod, almost shyly acknowledging the applause. He didn't boast or seek attention, simply stood there, letting the music speak for itself. She felt a sudden surge of courage and decided to speak up again. "Could you play it one more time?" she asked, her voice stronger now. Just, for me? He looked at her for a moment, then at the crowd and smiled. For you, he said, and started strumming again. This time, the music felt even more alive, more vibrant. Perhaps it was because of her presence, or maybe because he had found a new rhythm in her request. Whatever it was, the song seemed to fill the entire park, wrapping around everyone in an invisible embrace. She closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her. Memories of her childhood, of dreams she had almost forgotten, surfaced with each note. She remembered nights spent listening to music on her headphones, imagining a life filled with possibilities. She remembered moments of doubt, times when she had questioned herself. And now, here in the middle of a busy park, it all felt connected. The music was more than entertainment, it was a bridge to something greater. The crowd, too, seemed caught in the spell. People who had just walked past were stopping to watch, phones raised to capture a moment that felt rare and precious. Strangers exchanged glances, smiles, and silent nods of understanding. There was a sense of community, a shared human experience, brought together by nothing more than a man, a woman, and a song. As the second rendition reached its peak, the musician began to improvise. He added notes and rhythms she had never heard before, turning her simple request into something grand, something that felt like it had been waiting to be discovered all along. She gasped softly, amazed at how he could take something familiar and transform it into something entirely new, something breathtaking. She couldn't resist anymore. Without thinking, she started humming along, a small, hesitant sound at first, then growing bolder with each note. The musician noticed and adjusted, letting her voice weave in with the guitar, creating a harmony that neither of them could have planned. The moment was spontaneous, genuine, and utterly unforgettable. They were not performing for an audience anymore. They were creating something together, a fleeting masterpiece that existed only in that place, in that time. The crowd responded instantly. Some clapped in rhythm, some tapped their feet, some swayed gently as if moved by an invisible current. Even the children who had moments ago been chasing bubbles paused to listen and watch, their eyes wide with wonder. There was laughter, joy, and a quiet awe, all mixed together, creating an atmosphere that was alive and electric. By the time the song ended, she felt like she had been on a journey she couldn't explain. Her chest felt full, her eyes bright, and a smile she hadn't realized she had been missing returned. The musician looked at her, a hint of surprise and delight in his eyes, as if he hadn't expected her to join in, but was glad she did. It was a shared victory, a moment of human connection that transcended words. People continued to clap and cheer, some approaching to offer compliments, some simply lingering to savor the feeling. She thanked him quietly, her voice trembling with emotion, and he nodded, giving her a small, genuine smile. No grand gestures, no flashy moves, just a simple acknowledgement of the magic they had created together. As she walked away, she felt lighter, freer, and more alive than she had in a long time. The music lingered in her mind, not just as a memory, but as a feeling, spark of something extraordinary that had been ignited. She realized that sometimes courage comes in small doses, in moments where you dare to ask for something, and that the universe has a way of answering in ways you never expected. She glanced back one last time, seeing the musician packing up his guitar as the crowd slowly dispersed. She knew she might never see him again, but the experience had left an imprint on her heart. And she also knew that she had been part of something rare, something that reminded her of the beauty of connection, of music, and of the unexpected magic that can happen when you simply ask. The park returned to its usual rhythm, but for her, and for the few who had witnessed that moment, things had changed. The song that had started as a simple request had transformed into an unforgettable experience, leaving everyone who had been there in awe, and she carried that feeling with her, knowing it would stay with her for a long time. It was the beginning of something, though she didn't know what exactly, and that uncertainty felt exciting, full of promise and possibility. She walked away with a heart full of music, a mind buzzing with wonder, and a soul touched by the kind of magic that only life, unplanned and spontaneous, can bring. The next weekend, the park had the same lively energy, but she felt different as she walked in. There was an excitement in her chest, a feeling that she couldn't quite explain. The memory of the previous encounter with the musician lingered, like a song playing softly in her mind. She hoped, not even fully realizing it, that she might see him again. As she wandered along the familiar paths, she noticed a small crowd gathered near the fountain. Her heart skipped a beat. There he was, sitting on a worn blanket with his guitar, his fingers moving lightly across the strings as he played. The music was gentle, almost tender, and carried a sense of calm that contrasted with the bustling energy of the park around him. She stepped closer, careful not to disturb the people already listening. He seemed absorbed in his playing, yet there was a warmth in his presence that made everyone feel included. She watched him, noting the way his fingers moved effortlessly, the slight tilt of his head and the small smile that appeared whenever a note resonated just right. There was a quiet confidence in him now, something that made her smile. This time she didn't hesitate. She approached and stood near the edge of the crowd, letting the music wash over her before she spoke. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Could you play something new? Something that tells a story?" He looked up, eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. There was a flicker of recognition, and then a small smile appeared. "A story?" he asked. "I can try." "Any particular kind of story?" She thought for a moment, unsure how to explain. "Something that feels like hope. Like finding light when everything seems dark." He nodded slowly, understanding more than she expected. "All right," he said, adjusting his fingers on the strings. "Let's see what we can create." The first notes were soft, like whispers, careful and deliberate. The melody began to grow, carrying with it a sense of anticipation. She felt the music wrap around her, almost like it was speaking directly to her soul. She closed her eyes, letting herself be carried by the rhythm and the emotion in every chord as he played. She noticed subtle details she hadn't before, the way he shifted his weight slightly with each strum, the gentle tapping of his foot keeping time, and the small pauses he allowed that made the melody feel alive. It was not just a song. It was a living thing, breathing and moving with a life of its own. People around them began to notice the depth of the performance. A man in a business suit paused on his way to a meeting, captivated by the unexpected beauty. A group of teenagers, initially chatting and scrolling on their phones, slowly put them away, mesmerized by the sound. The air seemed to hum with quiet energy, a shared experience that connected strangers in a way that felt rare and precious. She felt herself drawn in even more, not just by the music, but by the musician himself. There was a kindness in his eyes, a gentle openness that made her feel like she had known him longer than a few moments. She realized that this connection wasn't just about the song. It was about something deeper, a sense of understanding between two people who had never met, but somehow spoke the same language as the song continued. He began to improvise, weaving in notes that seemed to tell a story of struggle and triumph, of moments of doubt followed by courage. She felt tears prick at her eyes again, but this time they were tears of joy, of recognition. She understood the story he was telling, even without words, and it resonated with her in a way that was both surprising and comforting, unable to resist. She began to hum softly along with the music, a gentle accompaniment that added a new layer to the melody. He noticed immediately, adjusting his playing to blend with her voice. The harmony that emerged was unexpected and beautiful, a spontaneous collaboration that felt effortless. For a moment, they were not performer and listener, but two creators sharing a moment of pure expression. The crowd reacted instinctively. People began to clap in rhythm, some tapping their feet, others swaying gently. There was laughter and quiet gasps, small expressions of awe as the music reached a crescendo. She looked around and saw strangers smiling at each other, strangers who had never met feeling connected through the simple act of listening and participating. The park felt alive in a new way, as if the music had breathed life into everyone present. As the song drew to a close, there was a moment of silence. The last note lingered, suspended in the air, and she felt a profound sense of peace. The musician looked at her, a mixture of surprise and delight in his expression, as if he hadn't expected her to join in, but was glad she did. She smiled back, feeling a bond that was unspoken yet undeniable. People began to approach, offering compliments, sharing smiles, and some asking if they could record the performance. She watched as the musician humbly nodded, accepting the appreciation without arrogance. There was a simplicity in his demeanor that made the experience feel genuine, authentic, and memorable. After a while, the crowd began to disperse, but she lingered, reluctant to let go of the moment. She felt a sense of gratitude not just for the music but for the unexpected connection, the shared human experience that had unfolded so naturally. She realized that these moments, rare as they were, had the power to change perspectives, to remind people of the beauty in life, even in small, fleeting instances. The musician packed up his guitar. But before he left, he looked at her and said, "I hope that brought you a little light today." She nodded, her eyes shining. "More than a little," she replied. "Thank you." He smiled, a simple gesture that carried warmth and sincerity, and then he walked away, blending into the crowd. She watched him go, feeling a mixture of sadness and joy, knowing that their paths had crossed in a meaningful way. Even if only for a short time, as she walked home, she reflected on the experience. The music, the connection, and the spontaneity of the moment had left a lasting impression. She realized that courage and vulnerability, even in small acts like asking someone to play a song, could lead to extraordinary experiences. She felt inspired not just by the musician's talent, but by the magic that happens when people open themselves to possibility. That night, she lay in bed thinking about the melody, the way it had made her feel, and the unexpected joy that had emerged from a simple request. She understood in a quiet way that life had a rhythm of its own, and sometimes all it took was the courage to ask, to reach out, and to engage with the world with an open heart. And so she waited, with hope in her heart, wondering what might happen the next time she returned to the park, and whether the magic of the music would call to her once more, ready to transform an ordinary day into something unforgettable. The following weekend, the park felt different to her, even though it was filled with the same familiar sounds of laughter, chatter, and the rustling of leaves. She walked along the path, her heart full of anticipation, and soon spotted a small crowd gathered near the old stone fountain. There he was, the musician, sitting cross-legged on a worn blanket with his guitar resting on his knee. His fingers moved deftly over the strings, producing a melody that was both gentle and haunting. Weaving through the air like a soft whisper, she stepped closer, careful not to push through the crowd, letting the music wash over her first. There was something in the way he played that felt different this time, as if he had grown even more confident, more expressive. The notes carried a story she could feel in her chest, even though she didn't know the words. She stood quietly, absorbing the sound, feeling the anticipation building in her heart. As the song ended, the crowd clapped politely, some leaving while others stayed, drawn to the aura that surrounded him. She hesitated for a moment, then gathered her courage and stepped forward. "Could you play something new today?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a mix of curiosity and hope. "Something unexpected?" He looked up, his eyes meeting hers briefly, a spark of recognition there. He smiled faintly. "Unexpected?" he repeated, as if tasting the word. "I think I can do that. But are you ready for a surprise?" Her heart skipped a beat. "Yes," she said firmly. "I want to be surprised." He nodded, adjusting the guitar, and began to play. The first notes were different from anything she had heard before. They were slow and deliberate, almost hesitant, as if testing the waters. Then, gradually, the rhythm grew, twisting and turning in ways that made her lean in, caught up in the unpredictability of the melody. It was as if the guitar itself had a mind of its own, guiding him to places he had never explored before. The music was more than just a song. It was a journey. Each chord carried emotion, each strum telling a part of a story that was raw, honest, and entirely unique. She felt herself pulled along, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm, her mind letting go of all distractions. Around her, the crowd was captivated too. People stopped in their tracks. Phones lowered as they surrendered to the beauty of the moment. She noticed subtle changes in his playing and unexpected pauses, sudden bursts of sound, an intricate fingerwork that made the melody unpredictable. The way he moved with the guitar, shifting his weight slightly with each chord, created a sense of motion that was mesmerizing. She realized that this was improvisation, pure and unfiltered, and it made her feel like she was witnessing something rare and fleeting. Unable to resist, she hummed softly along with the melody, adding her voice as another instrument. At first, it was tentative, but as he adjusted his playing to complement her, she grew bolder. The harmony that emerged was beautiful and spontaneous, a creation that neither of them could have planned, but felt entirely natural. The energy between them was palpable, and the connection extended to everyone watching. Strangers exchanged glances, smiles, and subtle nods, as if acknowledging the magic that was unfolding before them. The improvisation continued, building in intensity and complexity. He added rapid sequences of notes, then slowed down to allow moments of reflection. She found herself clapping lightly in rhythm, encouraging him without words, feeling a sense of participation that was exhilarating. The music was alive, almost as if it had taken on a personality of its own, guiding both of them through highs and lows. Moments of tension and release. As the song reached its peak, something extraordinary happened. The musician began to incorporate subtle rhythms that invited audience participation. People tapped their feet, clapped their hands, and some even sang along quietly. She felt a surge of joy as she realized the melody had become more than a duet between them. It had become a shared experience, a communal creation that united everyone in the park. She glanced around, noticing how the music affected different people. A young boy was swaying to the rhythm. A woman in a hat closed her eyes, smiling as if remembering something long forgotten, and an elderly man tapped his cane gently in time with the beat. The power of the music was undeniable, transforming ordinary individuals into participants in something larger, something meaningful. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for being part of this moment. The musician noticed her engagement and seemed inspired by it. His playing grew more daring, blending genres and experimenting with unconventional techniques. The melody twisted and turned in ways that surprised even her, evoking laughter, sighs, and gasps from the crowd. She felt a rush of exhilaration, realizing that what she thought would be a simple song request had turned into an unpredictable, breathtaking performance. Unable to contain herself, she added small vocalizations, subtle improvisations that intertwined with the guitar. The musician adjusted instinctively, creating harmony and counterpoint that elevated the music even further. They were no longer just performer and listener. They had become collaborators, co-creators of a spontaneous masterpiece that existed. Only in that moment, the crowd's reaction intensified as the performance unfolded. People were cheering, clapping, and some were even dancing. The energy in the park was electric, charged with a sense of awe and wonder. She felt the adrenaline rush through her veins, a mix of excitement and humility, knowing that she had contributed to something remarkable. The experience was exhilarating, humbling, and unforgettable all at once. As the song drew toward its conclusion, the musician slowed his pace, letting the final notes linger in the air. There was a hush as the crowd absorbed the ending, a shared moment of reflection and appreciation. She looked at him, seeing a mixture of pride, surprise, and satisfaction in his expression. It was clear that he too had been affected by their spontaneous collaboration. Moved by the connection and creativity they had shared, the applause erupted, louder and more enthusiastic than before. People were cheering, clapping, and some were shouting words of admiration. She smiled, feeling a rush of warmth and fulfillment. The musician nodded humbly, acknowledging the appreciation without any need for words. The moment had been about the music, the shared experience, and the unexpected joy that emerged from their collaboration. After the crowd began to disperse, she lingered, not wanting the experience to end. She walked up to him, her heart still racing, and said, "That was incredible. I didn't expect it to be this powerful." He looked at her, eyes twinkling with a mixture of amusement and warmth. "Neither did I," he admitted softly. "But sometimes the best moments happen when we let go and just follow the music." She nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. It wasn't about perfection, practice, or expectation. It was about presence, courage, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. That realization lingered in her mind, filling her with a sense of possibility she hadn't felt before as she walked home later. She replayed the performance in her mind, each note, each harmony, each subtle improvisation etched vividly. She felt inspired, not just by the music, but by the power of human connection, spontaneity, and the beauty of collaboration. It was a reminder that extraordinary moments often come when we take risks, step outside our comfort zones, and embrace the unexpected. That night, as she lay in bed, she realized that this experience had changed something within her. She felt more open, more willing to take chances, and more attuned to the beauty in the world. The park, the musician, and the song had become symbols of possibility, of courage, and of the magic that arises when two people connect through creativity. And as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. The memory of the performance, the connection, and the improvisation lingered, promising that the story was far from over, and that the next encounter could be even more extraordinary. Leaving everyone involved in awe once again, the weekend arrived, and the park was alive with energy, but she approached it with a new sense of excitement. She had been thinking all week about the previous encounters, the music, the unexpected collaborations, and the way it had all felt so alive. Today, she felt certain she would see him again, and her heart raced as she walked along the winding paths, lined with blooming flowers and the laughter of children. She found him near the old fountain, guitar in hand, playing with a focus and intensity that made the air around him shimmer. The melody was bold and confident, yet carried a softness that drew listeners in like a warm embrace. As she stepped closer, she noticed the subtle way his fingers moved over the strings, producing notes that were both delicate and powerful. He seemed to be playing not just with skill, but with heart, each note carrying emotion that touched everyone who listened. The crowd had begun to form naturally, a mix of familiar faces and new ones, all drawn by the music. She felt a rush of anticipation as she approached, unsure what would happen today, but certain it would be extraordinary. She waited until he paused, the last note lingering in the air, and then spoke softly. "Could you play something we create together today? Something that surprises us both?" He looked up at her, eyes bright with recognition, a small smile forming. "A creation together?" he asked, adjusting the position of his guitar. "I think we can do that. Are you ready?" She nodded eagerly, her excitement barely contained. "Yes, let's do it." He strummed the first chord, soft and tentative, and she joined in with a gentle hum. The music began slowly, almost cautiously, testing the waters, but as they continued, it grew richer, deeper, and more complex. Each note, each harmony seemed to tell a story, a conversation without words, a language only they understood. She felt the emotion of the music pour through her, her body swaying slightly to the rhythm. Her heart beating in sync with the melody, the musician began to improvise, adding unexpected chords and rhythms that made her hum in surprise and delight. She responded instinctively, letting her voice flow with the melody, creating harmonies that blended perfectly with his playing. The sound they produced was unlike anything she had ever heard before, a spontaneous masterpiece born from trust, courage, and collaboration. Around them, the crowd watched in awe, sensing that they were witnessing something rare and magical. As the music grew, so did the energy in the park. Strangers began to tap their feet, sway gently, or quietly hum along. Children paused their play to listen, their eyes wide with wonder. And even the vendors seemed captivated, their chatter fading as they absorbed the beauty of the moment. The air was alive with the sound of music and the shared human connection it created. She felt a deep sense of joy, not just for the music, but for the way it brought people together. Even for a brief moment, the musician noticed her engagement and responded with subtle changes in the rhythm, adding layers of sound that encouraged her to explore her voice further. They moved together as if guided by intuition, creating a dialogue of notes and tones that felt natural and effortless. She laughed softly at a sudden twist in the melody, and he smiled, adjusting his playing to match her energy. The spontaneity of it all made the experience exhilarating and unforgettable as the performance reached its peak. He introduced a new element, a gentle, percussive rhythm played on the body of the guitar. She joined in with her claps and soft vocalizations, adding texture and depth to the music. The sound resonated through the park, and the crowd responded instinctively, clapping, tapping, and moving in harmony with the rhythm. The music had transformed from a simple collaboration into a shared celebration, uniting everyone present in a moment of pure, joyful connection. She looked around, noticing the effect on the crowd. People were smiling, some closing their eyes, letting the music wash over them. A young woman began to sway gently. A man tapped his fingers in rhythm, and a child hummed along quietly. Even strangers who had just wandered in paused, drawn by the energy and emotion in the performance. The power of the music to touch hearts, to inspire, and to create a sense of community was undeniable. The musician and she continued, weaving together melodies and harmonies that ebbed and flowed, building tension and releasing it in waves of sound. Each improvisation felt like a conversation, a negotiation, a dance between two souls, expressing themselves without words. She felt exhilarated, alive in a way she had never experienced before, and she sensed that he felt it too. Their connection was tangible, electric, completely human. As the song approached its final moments, he played a series of soft, lingering notes, inviting her to respond in kind. She added a gentle hum, matching the emotion and tone. And together, they allowed the music to fade naturally, leaving a resonant silence in its wake. The crowd remained still for a heartbeat, absorbing the conclusion before erupting into applause, cheers and words of admiration. The sound was overwhelming, yet heartwarming, a testament to the impact of their collaboration. She looked at him, her eyes shining, and he nodded with a mixture of pride, gratitude, and humility. "That was incredible," she whispered. "I didn't know we could create something like that." He smiled softly, adjusting the guitar on his knee. "Sometimes the best music comes from letting go and trusting each other," he replied. "You brought something beautiful to it, too." They both laughed softly, a shared moment of understanding and connection. Around them, the crowd began to disperse slowly, lingering to offer compliments, take photos, or simply soak in the memory of what had just occurred. She felt a sense of fulfillment, joy, and inspiration, knowing that they had created something extraordinary together, something that would remain in their hearts long after the music had ended. As she walked home later that day, she reflected on the experience. The music, the improvisation, and the shared human connection had touched her deeply. She realized that moments like these, rare and unexpected, had the power to change perspectives, to inspire courage, and to remind people of the beauty of life. The park, the musician, and their collaboration had created a memory that she would carry with her forever. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the improvisation, the unexpected twists in the melody, and the way they had communicated without words. She felt a sense of anticipation and excitement for what might come next, knowing that the story was not finished, and that each encounter had the potential to be even more extraordinary. The memory of the music, the laughter, and the shared connection lingered, filling her heart with hope, wonder, and a deep sense of awe. The next weekend, she arrived at the park with a feeling she could not describe. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and the usual sounds of the park created a lively background. But she felt a sense of anticipation that made her heart race. She had come here for weeks, drawn by the memory of the musician and the extraordinary moments they had shared. And today she felt certain that something remarkable would happen again. As she walked along the winding path lined with trees, she spotted him near the fountain, guitar in hand. He was playing with focus, the melody flowing effortlessly, full of emotion and subtle complexity. The notes seemed to float in the air, wrapping around the people nearby, captivating them without effort. She noticed that the crowd had already begun to form naturally, a mixture of returning listeners and new faces drawn to the music. She approached quietly, letting the melody wash over her. Each note seemed to carry more depth than before, as if he had found a way to express something previously hidden. She felt a shiver run down her spine, recognizing the power of the music to move people in ways words never could. She waited for a moment before speaking, her voice gentle, yet full of excitement. "Could we try something completely new today? Something no one has heard before?" He looked up at her, eyes lighting with recognition and curiosity. A small smile appeared. "Completely new?" He repeated, "That's a challenge. Are you ready to create it with me?" She nodded eagerly. "Yes, let's make it unforgettable." He adjusted his fingers on the strings and began to play. The first notes were soft, almost tentative, but there was a sense of excitement in them. She joined in with a gentle hum, and immediately the music began to transform. It was a collaboration, a conversation without words, a dance between two souls expressing themselves purely through sound. The melody twisted and turned, surprising both of them with its complexity and beauty. The crowd began to notice something extraordinary was happening. People paused, their attention fully captured. A young boy stopped playing with his toy car, mesmerized. A woman on a bench leaned forward, smiling softly, eyes glistening with emotion. Even the regular park visitors, used to the usual weekend chaos, found themselves enchanted, drawn into a moment that felt rare and magical. As the song progressed, he began to improvise, blending different styles and techniques, turning the melody into something entirely unexpected. She added her voice, experimenting with harmonies and rhythms, creating a sound that neither of them could have predicted. They were in perfect sync, guided by intuition and the shared desire to create something beautiful. The music was alive, moving through them, through the crowd, and into the park itself. The energy in the park shifted. People began to participate, tapping feet, clapping hands, and humming along quietly. Children danced in small circles, laughing as they moved to the rhythm. Strangers exchanged smiles and nods, their shared experience creating a sense of community. The music had become more than a performance. It was a celebration of connection, creativity, the unexpected joy that emerges when people dare to engage fully in the moment. She felt a surge of exhilaration. The musician noticed and responded with daring chords, intricate fingerwork, and subtle shifts in tempo. The melody built and ebbed like waves, each rise and fall filled with emotion. She added vocal flourishes, small improvisations that intertwined seamlessly with the guitar. Together, they had created a symphony of spontaneity, a masterpiece born from courage, trust, and collaboration. As the music reached its climax, he invited the audience to join in. People clapped in rhythm, tapped on benches, and even sang along quietly. The park had transformed into a living, breathing concert hall, with every individual contributing to the energy and flow of the music. She laughed, feeling a mix of joy and disbelief at how something as simple as a shared moment could feel. So profound and powerful, the final notes approached. They slowed, softened, and allowed the sound to linger in the air, like a gentle echo that touched everyone present. The silence that followed was filled with awe as the crowd absorbed the weight of what they had just experienced. She looked at him, seeing pride, satisfaction, and a hint of surprise in his eyes. The connection between them had grown deeper, unspoken, yet undeniable. Built on shared creation and mutual inspiration, applause erupted louder and more heartfelt than before. People cheered, clapped, and some called out words of admiration. The musician acknowledged them humbly, a small smile of gratitude on his face. She felt a wave of fulfillment and joy, knowing that they had created something that would remain in the hearts of everyone present for a long time. It was more than music. It was a moment of human connection, pure and unfiltered. As the crowd began to disperse, she approached him. "That was incredible," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "I can't believe we did that." He smiled, adjusting his guitar. "Neither can I," he said softly. "But sometimes the most unforgettable moments happen when we trust each other and let the music guide us." She nodded, feeling a sense of understanding and gratitude. "Thank you for letting me be part of it," she said. "It's a memory I'll never forget." He gave her a small, genuine smile. "And I'll remember it too," he replied. Moments like this don't happen every day. As she walked home, the melody replayed in her mind. She thought about the courage it had taken to ask for the collaboration, the trust required to create something without a plan, and the joy that emerged from spontaneity and openness. The experience had changed her perspective, making her realize that life's most extraordinary moments often come from unexpected opportunities and the willingness to embrace them fully. That evening, she reflected on the series of encounters, the growth of their collaboration, and the joy they had created not just for themselves, but for everyone who had witnessed it. She understood that courage, curiosity, and openness could transform ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. The musician, the park, and the magic they had shared had left a lasting impact on her heart and soul. She smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun or the weather. It was the warmth of connection, creativity, and shared human experience. And she knew, deep down, that this was not the end. There would be more moments, more music, more magic, each building upon the last, leaving everyone involved in awe and reminding them of the extraordinary potential hidden in everyday life.